Okay, go ahead. You can start. Okay, well, welcome everyone to the third community meeting of DASH. Thanks for being here. So if you'd like to request Spanish or Amharic translations for these meetings, please let us know at this time. Si requiere traducción en español para esta presentación, por favor, déjenos saber. Esta es la tercera reunión de la comunidad sobre DASH y los servicios que se están proponiendo.
እንዴት አመሻችሁ የአሌክሳንድሪያ ነዋሪዎች የዳሽ ባስ የህዝብ ትራንስፖርት ተጠቃሚዎች በዛሬው ዕለት የምናደርገውን የ2025 የባጀት ዓመት በተመለከተ በአማርኛ ቋንቋ የሚያስረዳችሁ የሚያስተረጉምላችሁ ሰው ስላለ ጥያቄ ካላችሁ በስክሪን ላይ የሚገኘውን የእጅ ምልክት ብታሳዩን ልንረዳችሁ ዝግጁ ነን። እናመሰግናለን።
Okay, let me just quickly check to see if we have any comments or needs for translations. Okay, so I think we should be able to start. I'm going to hand it off to Tristan, who will be doing the presentation, and then at the end we'll do some Q&A or comments if there are any.
Thanks, Camilla. Good evening. My name is Tristan Cunningham. I am the service planning manager at DASH Alexandria Transit. We are here at the Mount Vernon Recreation Center this evening to walk through sort of a synopsis of the proposed fiscal year 2025 Alexandria Transit Strategic Plan. What's this not? Oh, I have to click. So the Alexandria Transit Strategic Plan is roughly analogous to what we called in previous years the Transit Development Plan, just following some new guidance and standards from the State Department of Rail and Public Transportation. Functionally speaking, it is the same document that we have produced for a number of decades now that outlines our service plans for the next 10 years. Heavy emphasis on the next year and the following year, and then a bit blurrier as we try to project forward and set a more general direction for the services beyond fiscal 26. We do have some service changes that we'll talk about this evening, and then we'll just collect any feedback that you would have. Again, this is an annual document with a 10-year outlook. So the document we're discussing this year covers the time period fiscal 2025 starting July 1st of this year through the end of fiscal year 2034, June 30th, 2034. We have released that document as a draft, and so we're walking through the draft. The final plan, amended with factoring public feedback and budgetary input from the City of Alexandria City Council, will be approved in either the April or May meetings of the Alexandria Transit Board of Directors. Full plan is available on our website at www.dashbus.com/strategic-plan. One of the new requirements as part of this plan from the Department of Rail and Public Transportation is that we establish metrics and standards by which we are comparing the service. We've always had some sort of industry best practices and standards that we have used in years past. Let me see if I can, it's a little blurry, see if we can, it's about as good as it gets, isn't it? Sorry, guys. Okay, do the best you can. I'll point out anything if anyone has any needs anything pointed out there on the wall. We used industry best practices and heuristics in the past. Now we have documented standards. We're proposing documented standards. The most significant in this plan would be the category of service design standards that you'll see on the top of the slide. Where we are setting targets for vehicle frequencies on routes in different categories. We have a metric that we're calling service availability, which indicates the number of city residents that are within a quarter mile of frequent service and then within a quarter mile of any service. And you can see the percentages that we are hoping to reach within the course of this plan, which would be 70% of city residents within a quarter mile of frequent route and 90% of city residents within a quarter mile of any route. And of course, we have our route categories of the frequent service network, which right now constitutes lines 31, 35, and 36. Local service, which is practically everything else starting with a 30, and then the commuter service on lines 103, 102, 3, and 4, one which we'll be discussing it a little bit of detail tonight. And then, of course, the trolley service. The most significant potential change proposed in this plan is a late addition that was the result of budgetary feedback, not budgetary feedback, I should say, that came in the city manager's proposed budget. We annually have to provide a list, a vetted list of potential service reductions and a vetted list of potential service improvements. And as the city manager's office is crafting the budget, they're going through those things and revenue projections and whatever other budgetary magic they perform, and provide us with with target guidance. And that guidance was that we needed to, if the budget was approved as proposed, which they rarely are, we would have to implement a reduction on line 104, being the least impactful of the options that were provided. All, of course, subject to budgetary approval from the Alexandria City Council. This, again, was inserted into the plan, and we've received a lot of feedback about it, and that feedback is being directed specifically towards our board of directors and also to City Council. The final decision rests with City Council on whether they're going to provide a level of funding that allows us to retain the service, or if they are going to mandate that the service is reduced by reducing the available funding for it. And by the way, guys, it's a small enough crowd. If you do have any questions at any time, maybe to restate, explain anything, feel free to just raise your hand, and we'll just don't wait until the end and then forget what your question was or anything. We're here to get you the information you need. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, this just contradicts the previous slide, which said the standard for commuter lines is 30 minutes.
It does. It absolutely does. And that's one of the reasons we do not want to implement this change.
Yeah.
Understand that this change is not something that Dash woke up and decided we want this service to be much less effective than it currently is. We want our routes to meet these standards that we're defining.
And you look at ridership on the 104, the 104, like in the afternoon, excuse my voice, in the afternoon, it runs from the Pentagon from 3:15 to 8:15 every 30 minutes.
Yes.
The buses after 7:15 or so are almost empty.
True.
So if you're looking at changing the service, you probably would be less impact if you shrunk the hours of service instead of the frequency.
That can certainly be looked at and passed along as feedback.
Yeah.
I don't know that it meets the dollar figure that City Council met, but that can certainly be looked at.
Well, because years ago, the line in the afternoon ran from 3:40 until 7:20.
Correct.
I think it was 3:37. And the last one was 7:20.
Yeah.
Some crazy thing.
Yeah.
But that was when the 104 replaced the AT4, the service hours were extended. However, the ridership isn't there, except maybe between 4 and 6.
Right. Yeah, a lot
and
of.
Similarly in the morning.
Correct. A lot of that came from trying to make sure we were making a level of service available in the new Dash network that met some of the new or newer commuting trends that we saw at the time the research and the data was all taken, which was before the pandemic. And we have to take that context in mind here, that there have been a lot of changes to commuting patterns on these two very heavily commuter-oriented services. And you're absolutely right. There could be little hidden pockets there that you know, that maybe there is some fat that can be trimmed. I'm not sure. I haven't done that research, but I certainly can.
I've been on 104 at 8:15, the Pentagon, I'm usually the only one if I'm on that bus.
Yeah.
And the bus that leaves Braddock Road in the evening at 8:15 goes all the way to the Pentagon, even though there's no return trip, which I never understood.
I'm sure. I don't know what that operator has to do after that work. He might have a
What
35
happens
to
is
do or something.
the operator gets to Park Fairfax, nobody on the bus, so he goes back to the garage.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying he drove up to the Pentagon empty. Okay.
No, but
He's scheduled to. He or she. Thanks for that feedback, Bob, and we'll certainly take that down and pass that along in our submission to the board. Beyond I realize it's going to sound a bit contradictory, but beyond the reduction that was proposed in the city's budget proposal, we are in parallel, or have in parallel, requested funding to expand some services in the direction of the 2022 Alexandria Transit Vision Plan. That plan was implemented in its earliest stage as the quote New Dash Network in September of 2021 as a fiscally constrained version of the ultimate vision that we had for what the route network needed to look like and what the service levels were. Standards that push us towards those categories and those service standards that you saw at the beginning of the presentation. And so we are proposing, what came from us to City Hall was proposing 3 unfunded service changes that incrementally bring our services up to that vision that was adopted in 2022, or sorry, in 2021, fiscal year 2022. First of those changes in our first priority for this year, once the city gets into its ad fleet process, if there were funds remaining, our biggest ask would be improving service on line 32. This service runs along Eisenhower Avenue in sort of the next big thing as far as Alexandria is concerned. The next area of major development, anticipated major development, lots of new residential and commercial coming online in the next so many years. That service is the only, or the final remaining 60-minute frequency on a daytime route within the Dash system. And so bringing that service up to the standards that we indicated earlier, with a maximum frequency of every 30 minutes during the day, and also evenings and weekends, would be our headliner request, so to speak. Referring to the standards that I mentioned at the beginning that are spelled out in detail in the full plan online, you can see the bottom of the slide there, the objectives that are met with this service improvement. It again meets the what was adopted by the city council with the ATV plan, brings this route up to a headway standard that we're establishing in this plan. The ridership is anticipated to meet the levels that are defined in the plan, and it serves a couple underserved areas. The Eisenhower corridor is underserved, and the South Pickett Street corridor is also underserved by those standards. Second proposal would be to increase service on Sundays on line 34. Taken in parallel with the 32 changes, this would eliminate 60-minute frequencies within the Dash system if both changes were adopted, so that we're operating a full 30-minute network, maximum 30-minute frequency network, all day long, 7 days a week. The 34 was recently realigned when Potomac Yard Metro opened. When the new Dash network was implemented in 2021, that service ran from Lee Center to Braddock Road Station. And there has been considerable ridership growth that we expect to continue by running that service up to Potomac Yard Metro and the Potomac Yard Center, especially as that area continues to develop. Minus a sports arena entertainment district, but still subject to extensive development. And the last change, the last service improvement that we've proposed in this plan would be a little hard to see on the map because the service already exists where we're operating line 31 between Braddock Road Metro Station and the Alexandria campus at Nova. But during the off-peak periods, alternating trips and coming in the eastbound direction into King Street Metro instead of continuing all the way into Old Town. Okay. So you won't visually see that change on a diagram or anything, but we're just wanting to extend all of those short trips to Braddock Station to provide a more convenient travel from points west into Old Town, better connectivity. Looking out beyond fiscal 25, some of our further out aspirations in fiscal 26, we're wanting to improve line 30, which is our Duke Street service. Looking to bring that the off-peak frequencies of that route to 15 minutes. That's going to be critical once the Duke Street in Motion project is at full build out, and there's high capacity transit accommodations on Duke Street. Line 32 that I mentioned previously. Beyond the improvement that we're proposing for the off-peak, we aspire to improve the peak frequencies to 15 minutes. And then contrary to the budgetary guidance that we've received thus far, and also indicative of how important lines 103 and 104 are to us, we aspire to improve frequencies from 30 minutes to 20 minutes. And so, yes, in one breath, we're speaking of a reduction to 60. It is our goal and aspiration to actually be operating instead of 30. We want to operate it at 20, which is the frequency that those routes ran on before the pandemic. What we can't yet speak to in this plan, because it's not quite done, is whatever changes are going to happen to transit in Alexandria as a result of WMATA's implementation of what they're calling their Better Bus Network redesign. I believe an early snapshot of that will be released publicly next month, if I'm not mistaken. So keep your eyes out for that. And then further beyond fiscal 26 into 27, we're looking at improving line 102 from 60 minutes to 30 minutes, extending the trolley to Eisenhower Station to provide a higher level of service through the PTO and Carlisle area. And we're looking forward to the implementation of the West End Transit Way, which runs along Van Dorn Street and Beauregard Streets out on the West End. In addition to talking to us here in the meeting, there are a few different channels you can exercise to get your feedback in front of those, the decision makers. The website, as I mentioned, has the full strategic plan. There's also a link to a feedback form that just pipes straight through to our board of directors, and also a feedback form that goes straight to City Council. You can also hit us up on social media at @bus, or by email bus@alexandriava.gov, which Bob does very regularly, much to our delight. Of course, you can also call us 7 a.m., 7 p.m. Monday to Friday at 746-. This says the same thing, but with a pretty logo with the yellow swoosh through it. Any questions? How do we get questions from the Zoom, if any?
No comments.
Don't see any.
Nope, I don't see any.
Okay.
But if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat option, or we can also unmute you if you want to say something. So let us know.
Tristan,
yes.
Let's go back to the 104 slide with the map.
This one? I think that's the only one with the map.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm sorry it's so hard to see.
If I stand here on the corner of Preston and Martha,
Yes.
at 7 o'clock in the morning, or 8 o'clock, or 9 o'clock, at the top of the hour, there's a dash 104 bus to the Pentagon, and that shows up on my corner. And on the opposite side of the street, the 22A Metro bus stops also go to the Pentagon
Yes.
at the same time.
Okay.
Now, obviously, if we were going to reduce the headway from 30 to 6, increase the headway from 30 to 60 minutes, we'd want to have those aligned differently so they'd be every 30 minutes. Because I've got a choice, everybody have a choice here of the 22A, which goes this way, or the 104, which goes this way.
This is why we love your emails, Bob. That's great feedback.
Pentagon, see? And then if you look at the better bus network, I think there's a route, they're calling it 386 or 360.
They've changed. They've changed again.
Anyway, it's going to go from the Pentagon, and it's going to loop around Shirlington, and it's going to come through Park Fairfax this way, I think. And then it's going to go on like the 25 route today, up Carlin Springs Road and Boston, or someplace like that. And it's supposed to run every 30 minutes until 11 o'clock in the evening. And
I think that's a 23 variant that they're proposed, or spiritually would say it would be a 23.
I think it's more like George. It's not going to go up Reed Road. It's going to
Right. Yeah, gotcha.
George Mason.
Yeah. So yeah, that's great feedback where, if we did end up having to sustain this change to make sure that we're coordinating with the other services in Park Fairfax. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I don't believe you're going to make this change, but if you did, we'd certainly want to coordinate that so we don't have a 22A and a 104.
Both your options poofed on at once.
Hourly,
Yeah.
both at the same time.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Let's see. Okay. Any other questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, ideas? We'll take it all.
My only feedback is I would love to see the improvement of the 34 on Sundays.
Okay.
That's it.
Noted. Great. Thank you. So would we.
Owen. Yep.
Okay.
I also, I don't want to monopolize this, but I've heard some comments about why don't we bring the fares back? Or why don't we have fare in the rush hour for people going to the Pentagon? 40 years ago, when Dash started, there was a 25-cent surcharge going to the Pentagon.
Yes, there was. I remember those days.
That was
not 40 years ago.
Before Smart Trip cards.
Yep.
You put coins in the fare box.
And you could pay $10 extra for a Pentagon pass.
Yeah, Pentagon pass, or if you were paying for the single ride, it was 25.
Yeah.
So there is some precedent for.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there's a few hurdles that would make restoring fare collection a lot more expensive and a lot more complicated than it's not an easy switch to flip. For one, all our fare collection hardware is obsolete. And so we're looking at a second 7-figure capital expenditure to replace all that stuff. If you're at Metrobus, you'll start to notice that they're actually getting new fare boxes on their buses, and other regional agencies will be starting to do the same. What we have on our buses right now is the original Smart Trip technology with minor incremental improvements that was debuted in 1999. Now, if any of you have a computer from 1999 still in your house, you'll know that there's very little you can do with it these days. And so if a decision came from somewhere that we'd have to restore fare collection, number one, we can't do it in fiscal 2025 because the free fares that are in place now or not in place now, English. The cost of the free fare program now is funded by a state grant that mandates this fourth and final year, fiscal 25, of participation. And if we didn't and reinstitute fares, we'd have to pay the state back. I think it's upwards of $7 million that have been awarded since the program began. So that's the first one, is that it's a considerable expenditure that we'd be on the hook with, or city council would be on the hook with, to pay that back. Much, much, much more than it costs to actually, than they're looking for in savings from this proposal. And then, of course, the major expense of replacing all the hardware. So those are the two objective hurdles, the two things that are just red lines and hard stops that we don't even get to sit down and talk about and think about. The things that we do get to sit down and talk about and think about are the types of growth that we've seen in ridership as part of some combination of the new frequent service network, the all-day network, and free fares. We've seen ridership numbers that they're unparalleled in Dash history, and we've been one of the few systems to reach ridership levels in the last fiscal year that exceeded pre-pandemic numbers. That goes with very limited precedent. And the question that we have to ask is, well, there's institutions all over studying this, trying to figure out how much of that is free service, how much of that is frequent service, how much of that growth can be attributed to each. But there's a formula there that has been shown in numbers that to work very well in the city of Alexandria in the demand that we're seeing for transit. And I think the necessary conversation, we have to have these conversations. We're talking about reducing service because it's nothing that anybody at Dash wants to do. But at the same time, when we're looking at the numbers of riders impacted by a service change here versus everyone that rides Dash, that has to be taken very, very seriously, very, very methodically. And those conversations aren't taking place right now because of that $7 million plus red line that we can't cross this year anyway. So we don't have the option of re-implementing fares this year to pay for maintaining 104 service. That conversation could take place beyond 25, but there's some potentially compelling reasons to at least be very cautious.
I'm not advocating for
Okay.
restoring fare. I'm just saying,
Okay.
I've heard people
Think you're very right. Yes, yes.
why are you cutting service? Why don't you charge a low fare?
That makes sense.
Because before the pandemic, you took in about $4 million a year.
Right.
In revenue from fare box.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. I didn't mean to miss.
And another issue that people don't realize is that Metro bus is also free when you're transferred to Metro Rail.
Absolutely. Yep.
The full bus fare is deducted from the
Rail fare. Yep.
So unless I'm just riding the bus,
Mm-hmm.
like I did to come over here, it's free if I take Metro bus to the Pentagon and get on the train.
Correct. And that's something that probably needs to be a drum that needs to be beat a little louder.
Metro doesn't.
They don't talk about it.
No.
I don't even know if people actually know that they're not having that discount is being factored automatically.
Don't.
Yeah.
They just perceive that Metro is charging them $2 to ride the bus.
Right.
Dash is no, Dash is free.
Right.
But if I take Dash from Park Fairfax and then Metro to Metro Center, it's the same if I take a Metro bus.
Right. You're out of pocket. It's the same.
Yeah.
You're just dividing it
Exactly.
a little bit differently. Absolutely.
One thing that I think would serve the Delray community better is if the 33 provided two different routes, if you split it like 33A and B or two different numbers to provide service the full length of Commonwealth, because right now it turns from King.
That's a on Monroe.
Right.
Yeah.
If it continued all the way down to Core Kelly down there,
Mhm.
that would serve a large apartment complex on the corner of Glebe and Commonwealth, as well as all of that neighborhood back here.
True.
Is that in consideration? Is that something that?
It's not in consideration yet. You just mentioned it.
Okay.
So yeah, actually, we definitely look at that. We are looking at some options for specifically this side of town, just to make sure that the mix of services that we're offering right now makes the most sense. We are guided very heavily, not religiously. We can deviate, but we are guided very strongly by that Alexandria Transit Vision Plan.
Okay.
That was a multi-year effort, collaborative effort with the city, with demographics, with development projections and all sorts of other inputs to try and establish sort of the bones of the network. But that's not a dramatic change, I don't think. And that's definitely something we can take back and research.
And it's something I've noticed that buses will oftentimes deadhead down Commonwealth, and it's disappointing to see a bus on my street that's not picking up passengers.
Probably trying to get stationed over at Potomac Yard.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah. Unfortunately, from where we are on Duke Street, there's no easy way to get to Potomac Yard.
Yeah.
It's
Well, yeah.
Sorry, I just want to make sure from my notes. Your earlier comment, was that about the 32 or 34?
34.
30, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and actually, just to piggyback on the 34th thing, it is a great line, and I think, you know, folks, especially in Delray, don't appreciate the 34. So to the extent it's possible, I think doing some advertising around that and then also increasing service and like core hours eventually would be a really good thing to do, because it is a great way just to get from Delray to Old Town, like for the heart of Old Town, not worry about parking, not worry about anything like that. And it is super efficient. So I don't know, maybe there's even a rebranding in there, like, you know, Delray Old Town Connector or something like that. Yeah, no one that I know knows anything about 34.
Definitely doesn't serve major corridors where you would necessarily expect to see high frequency bus service or anything. It just sort of quietly slinks along in the back of Old Town, and if you know, you know.
That's the thing.
So yeah, we can, yeah, that's something we definitely look at.
Yeah, I mean, I had jury service the other weekend. I mean, it was super convenient to get there, get back, into the St. Patrick's Day parade. Like, I mean, it's just very easy, even with detours, it was way easier and faster. So I don't know, just some better branding around that, because you see, you know, the buses up and down Mount Vernon Avenue all the time, but you know, like you said, just kind of slinks in the back.
Yeah,
And I think people are also a little bit scared of the, you know, the BRT lanes and whatnot. Exactly how to get it there.
Oh yeah, makes sense. But glad to find the service useful. We were hoping that, especially with the Potomac Yard realignment, we would. It was a fairly low performing route before. It was almost a placeholder route, because we knew when we were developing the new network, we knew Potomac Yard Metro was coming, obviously. And so the alignment to Braddock prior to the current iteration was, well, it's got to go somewhere. And so it wasn't the best performer, but we understood that. It was just a matter of time. And so now the Potomac Yard service, we're again very glad to hear that you're finding it very useful. And yeah, we'll definitely take that feedback.
Would be really awesome. I don't know if it currently operates this way. If the 34 and 36 operated as one continuous route, if the buses, instead of turning around and going back.
The 36 got to Potomac Yard to continue down to the Lee Center or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you could do a 1-seat ride, let's say I work at City Hall and I live up Park Fairfax. Doing a 1-seat ride that way doesn't make the most sense. I guess you could take. Yeah, there really isn't a direct route to Park Fairfax from City Hall. So some sort of, that's not interlining, is it?
It could be, depending on how you define the term. I mean, that could just be one route in theory.
Yeah.
You know, if it makes sense, staple them together and just run one service, you know?
Well, I've seen the 104 and the 30 interlining at Braddock Road.
Yeah, operationally, the way that our bus assignments are structured, the buses themselves, if you looked at, you know, the magic underneath the timetable, operate almost like Southwest Airlines. You know, a bus ends up here, and in the schedule, the next thing it does might have no connection to what it did previously. And it's just a matter of, it really just comes down to the math of how long it takes to get places and how much time, you know, they need for a break and how the whole network works cohesively. And it's wildly efficient in a way that leaves little protection. So you'll see that. And if both routes are running great. If one route gets disrupted, guess what happens to the other, you know? So it's one of those things that we, you know, go back and forth with. This is a much more efficient way of operating the service. It certainly brings out the best of our operators, because they're challenged to know every route that we've got and can tell you anything in the city of Alexandria because they probably started in a completely different part of town that morning. But in a city as congested as Alexandria, there are questions to ask, and there is caution that needs to be taken on when we take the opportunity to do that, because again, a disruption in one part of town will just completely hose another line completely unconnected to it, except for the way that the buses themselves actually operate. But that's the type of feedback we're looking for, though, and the type of feedback that, as a transit planner, is the most elusive to us is we're able to see that a bunch of people got on here and a bunch of people got off there. We don't know if the person that got on here is the person that went there, or if they got off somewhere else. We don't have good origin destination data.
Mhm.
And so having that type of information as to really where people are and where they're trying to go. There are companies that will sell us a batch of data that they gathered from cell phone movements or easy passes running around town or things like that. But it's really hard to know, it's via Metro Rail. You tag in, you tag out, they instantly know where people are starting and ending, So yeah, definitely the type of feedback we're always very happy to receive.
Just one other thing on 34 that occurs to me.
Yes.
I think part of the problem is the destination is like Lee Center, south. Like no one knows what Lee Center is.
Mhm.
Right? So maybe it could be like Old Town.
South Old Town or something.
Yeah. So that people know this bus goes to Old Town. Right?
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Otherwise, you kind of feel like it just falls off. The base,
Falls off the edge of town.
We're probably gonna change the name of Lee Center to one of these days.
Well, it's Nanny
either-
J. Lee. It's not
Yeah.
Robert E. Lee. So yeah.
That's
So
a lot of Lee's liner.
yeah. Now, if Nanny J is at all related to Robert E., I don't know. But no, that's a good that's a good point. We've tried playing around a little bit with the destination signs and what we're calling stuff. And you've seen like the Old Town Circulator, for instance,
Mhm.
wondering if that might be any more legible to somebody than, okay, this bus is at some point going to end up at Braddock Road Metro. That's not where I'm going, but that's where that bus is going. Okay, cute. But does that help me or not? And then you throw this brand on like Old Town Circulator, and I think people, see, okay, well, I'm going to Old Town. Let's see if this is, going to work for me. If it does nothing but inspire the curiosity to find out if that bus is going somewhere that matters to them, then it's probably worth pursuing. So yeah, play around with that some more.
But in Old Town, the tourists will pile into the trolley
Yep.
and they don't take the Old Town Circulator, even though they're both free.
And they both go to the same place. And the Old Town Circulator runs more often and earlier and later.
Lots of times at pop-ups.
Yep.
See people that are waiting for a bus, waiting for the trolley, and especially in the morning before 11 a.m. when it runs, and telling them, hey, you can grab this bus.
Yep.
Mhm.
We'll even have operators stop and like, hey, come with me. And we'll wait for the trolley. And some people are there for the experience, but then some people are following that very strong brand.
Yeah.
And that's something that we probably need to work on is at least how to indicate in that specific instance that basically any bus on King Street is practically fungible if you're not going anywhere past City Hall. Something for us to play with.
Yeah.
Understand this playing is very serious. We take this very seriously, but for us to experiment with and find the best way to do
Trolley wrap on regular buses.
that.
Well, it would have to be something like that because people aren't willing to take the bus because the bus is less.
Yes.
During the, when we were contracted to do the Blue Line shuttle, we actually had a destination sign, custom destination sign that said choo-choo, I'm a train, or.
I saw that,
Oh
yeah.
my goodness, I saw that.
Yes.
I saw that on our first day.
Tourists like it because it looks a tacky, old timey thing,
Yeah.
but it's redundant with the circulator.
We when we start one of the very, very early conversations about the Alexandria Transit Vision Plan was that question of whether, is the trolley off book? Is the trolley up for grabs? What do we do with the trolley service? But thanks, Dan. There was a lot of interest in retaining it because it's really considered to be part of the fabric of Old Town. And it's one of the things that is often marketed about Old Town. And beyond the transportation value specifically and directly, it's for one, it comes out of a separate pot of money. So we don't necessarily get to just take that money and use it for other buses. Excuse me. It's lodging taxes mostly. But I mean, you go into businesses, there's pictures of it everywhere. And there just at that time was a lot of interest in retaining that. If we ask that same question in 5 years, who knows? The vehicles we have are getting a bit long in the tooth, and at some point we'll have to figure out if we can get new ones that are going to be electric and things. There's nothing on the market right now that will replace them as they are, but in electrified form. So we have to figure that out in the next probably 4 or 5 years. Part of the Eisenhower extension that I mentioned for, I think that's 26 or 27. What else?
So what is the deadline to provide feedback? Because on the website it says the 26th, but.
Yeah, we'd initially planned some of these meetings to happen a little bit sooner and then ran into scheduling issues. So the deadline's been extended to March 29th, and we'll be updating that.
Is that tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. Let's get those keyboards going.
But you can still provide feedback on the Alexandria webpage, the budget page. They have a feedback form there too.
The city,
Directly to the city, yeah.
Yeah,
the
if you want
city
to,
will accept comment longer than we will. Does that make sense?
if you, mainly because this document has its own approval process, it's separate from the actual budget. So if you wanted to weigh in on in support or opposition of any of the, particularly the improvements and the service standards and some of the other items, that's the 29th. The 104 stuff that goes along with the city's budget, I don't know what the city's deadline is. Perhaps I can Google it real quick, but
Yeah, I'm not sure what the
I
deadline
think
is for
it's
the
a
city.
public hearing, mid-April.
yeah, I think we've got a good number of weeks still.
I think it will be like around the first week of May, because that's when they kind of have to make a decision.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure that out, but
And by the way, even when this process closes, you can give us comments like this at any time, not just when we're discussing service changes. I know that's when we're top of mind for a lot of people, but the kind of feedback we're hearing from you all, we appreciate, and we'll take that any time of year.
absolutely. Very good point. I haven't heard anything in this room that we couldn't listen to as equally in December as we could in July. I assume the gathering of keys means that you're taking your leave of us.
We are ready to go.
All right,
So-
well, thanks for coming out.
We actually-
Okay. Well, thanks for riding Dash, everybody. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you so much for being here.